We're making content here, and I'm going to be reviewing the very first part of this stream, this video by Bad Empanada on the Holodomor genocide question. I've watched about 45 minutes, and I just had to dip out because it was good. It just felt like, okay, I get the idea, you know? But I did find the, and I do suggest you watch it if you have any questions on the topic. So, but I do want to share at the beginning because it's exceptional and it talks about Wikipedia, and I'd like to focus on that. And I think this can really help my viewers and the community and just people who are wanting to be more media savvy, people who want media literacy, who want to improve their media literacy and skills, so that they can catch when they're being propagandized too, right? Okay, so I think, again, it's a good video. I'm not, I do suggest you watch it. I'm going to review the first part of it, though, which is just on Wikipedia. Here we go.
Hi.
Hi.
In this video, I'm going to be going over and critiquing the Wikipedia page for the Holodomor genocide question. In doing so, I'll talk about Wikipedia's problems, which will hopefully inspire viewers to look at it a bit more critically. Something that I think is important because many of us use it constantly, myself included. We'll also be going over the historical research on the Holodomor and the...
I'm showing you this because it's been super helpful because I also use Wikipedia all the time, and it sort of has been informative, like in the sense that when I'm using Wikipedia in certain ways, I need to be, suspicious in certain ways. I need to know what I'm looking at. I need to have a better idea of when I may be propagandized to. So, again, just a great video here. Here we go.
1932 to 1933 Soviet famine in detail, and especially the question of whether or not the famine was intentionally planned and engineered to genocide Ukrainians. A pretty commonly held belief that you might have heard of before, and something that I've wanted to address here on my channel for a while now. Now let's get right down to it. Wikipedia is, according to its official tagline, the free encyclopedia that anyone can edit. In theory, that's a great idea, an attempt to try and aggregate the sum of human knowledge in a very collaborative and inclusive way. And it does usually work okay. It's reasonable at giving an introductory outline on many topics, especially ones that aren't particularly controversial, and it's mostly reliable if you just want to look up some basic facts. Things like, what is a dog? Or what is a snake? Or who was the president of the USA in 2017?
What was that? What was that, dude?
What is a snake? Or who was the president of the USA in 2017? Where things start to get a bit complicated is when we go beyond simple, uncontroversial information and into the whys and hows of an issue. For example, why was Donald Trump the president of the USA in 2017 is an infinitely more complicated and subjective question than just who was the president in 2017. There are many different arguments as to how he got elected, some better or more convincing than others. So in an article that addresses that question, how do we decide which of them are closer to the truth or which to include and which not?
I'm just going to say that's very simple framing, but it's true, right? And it sort of helps to know that, right? Sometimes you're just reading, what is this? Where is place? Tell me the thing. Otherwise, you're like, what's happening? And you want to try to figure out, something that makes sense in your head. You're trying to piece together almost a narrative or whatever. And that's when it gets tricky. That's when it gets tricky. And I think that just that simple framing right there is super fucking helpful, and it's going to inform me moving forward.
Not to. Wikipedia's attempt to tackle this problem is its stated policy of neutrality. The idea is that when venturing beyond the realm of simple...
If you've gone down any rabbit hole and included Wikipedia in your search, you know this is bullshit, right? You've seen it time and time and time again if you've done this kind of work.
Uncontroversial facts,
the
article should mostly try to avoid forming its own conclusions. Rather, it should try to present the arguments and counter-arguments of both sides and allow the reader to make their own assessment. In practice, however, it rarely actually works out that way, because Wikipedia is a product of both its rules and the opinions and agendas of its editors, moderators, and administrators. Its rules dictate that articles must be based on reliable sources, and these reliable sources must be published
My butthole.
by a reputable party. That alone already injects a ton of bias into the encyclopedia, as what's considered reliable and reputable in the first place is not only subjective, but can be very prone to manipulation. News outlets of record are considered shoo-ins as reputable, reliable sources on Wikipedia.
Reuters. Associated Press. Sure, guys. I don't know these other ones.
It's incredibly common for entire articles to be based on their conclusions alone, which are taken as simple proven fact by virtue of the fact that they said so. Yet that these outlets have a particular editorial line they tend to adhere to that dictates what they choose to report on in the first place, how they report on it, and even the purported facts that they present is given little to no consideration, nor is the fact that said editorial—
That's so hard to see. Right? That's so hard to look back on and see that. You're just like, what?
Used to report on in the first place.
You cannot believe they did this. It's just off the charts. You can. You know, it's like one of these things you're not surprised, but your jaw's still on the floor. You're like, wow.
How they report
like
on it,
right now.
and even the purported facts that they present, is given little to no consideration, nor is the fact that said editorial line also always happens to conform with the interests of their impossibly rich owners. These media organizations, with their hegemonic control over the flow of supposedly reputable information, are also able to leverage this control to turn themselves into the arbiters of what's even considered to be reliable and reputable in the first place.
This is why there are like prevalent narratives in the imperial core, dude. And that's why you're like talking to a wall when you're talking to people when that's all that they know. They've been propagandized by the imperialists so fucking hard. They don't know anything else. They've never pierced the imperial veil trying to figure out anything about the world. So of course they don't know what that's like. So they're just propagandized and they're just so used to it. They don't know it. It's so hard to explain that to like people who think they're like progressive or whatever. And I'm like, no.
This manifests on Wikipedia too. When the community comes together to decide on whether a source is reliable or not,
guy.
the simple fact that other
Jeff Bezos is currently exploiting me on this website at this very moment. I hate that guy. He owes me money. Can you ask him for my money? Yeah, what would I say to him if I had a chance? I'd say, where's my money? Hey, Jeff. Give me my money, Jeff. Or at the very least, he could sub to my channel, Jeff.
Reliable sources consider it reliable themselves is given huge weight, such as in this discussion about
I'm just saying that company does not need to exploit me. They've got plenty of money.
Reliability of an Australian military think tank, which was nearly voted as being reliable just on the basis that other Western media outlets like to cite it. So it's a self-perpetuating circle of bias. Wikipedia rarely assesses individual sources on their own merit. Rather, they're far more often accepted or rejected based purely on the perceived reputability of their host publication. By extension, essentially just giving the editors of these so-called reputable outlets editorial control.
Like green? Is that like good?
Over Wikipedia itself. To make matters
we gotta check that out.
worse, on Wikipedia, the ultimate decision on the reliability and reputability of a source is made via community votes. And
here's the legend for this for what he was just looking at. Little green checkmark means generally reliable. Editors show consensus the source is reliable, that in most cases on subject matters in its areas of expertise. All right, we'll just glance at this quickly. There's one with no consensus, unclear, or additional considerations apply. The source is marginally reliable, or it means either generally reliable nor generally unreliable, and may be usable depending on context. Okay? There's also generally unreliable. Editors show consensus that the source is questionable in most cases. There's depreciated. There's a little red box. There's community consensus for a request for comment to depreciate the source. Source is considered generally unreliable. There's blacklisted. There's request for comments, stale discussions, discussion in process. Let's take a peek. Oh my God. ABC News. There is consensus that ABC News, the news division of the American American Broadcasting Company, is generally reliable. Okay, and now we can refer to my video where CBS News was doing the war propaganda. They had Malcolm Nance on. Tokenized torturer talks to
was there.
Twix.
I met people that
And the lady at the very beginning goes, "Thank you for your service. I love everything that you're about." Is that the...
A secure location in western Ukraine is a Ukrainian international legionnaire.
You may be thinking to yourself, what's the Ukrainian international legionnaire? No, skip this part. Skip this part, Dan. Yeah, or they don't care.
Malcolm, he is also a 20-year Navy veteran. Malcolm, first, thank you for
20-year veteran. Even more alarm bells are going off. Shut up, Dan.
Service, and
he goes, "Thank you for your service.
Of everything that you're about."
And I love everything that you're about. That's ABC News for you. It's like the second source they put up there. The first source that they said is that they have consensus that it's reliable. Oh, my Lord above. Oh, my Lord above. Please continue. Bad empanada.
Wikipedia rarely assesses individual sources on their own merit. Rather, they are far more often accepted or rejected based purely on the perceived reputability of their host publication. By extension, essentially just giving the editors of these so-called reputable outlets editorial control over Wikipedia itself.
And that's dangerous.
To make matters worse, on Wikipedia, the ultimate decision on the reliability and reputability of a source is made via community votes. And the people who comprise said community come from societies where the hegemonic media also happens to dictate public opinion.
And this is why I'm saying it's hard if you have only been propagandized by imperial core propaganda. You don't know it. You think sometimes you're like reading something and you're like, wow, this is truly leftist. No, it's not. Read some Marx, if you really want to. Like, libs will do everything they can think of to keep themselves from engaging with a Marxist idea. It's just incredible.
So of course their vote is just going to reaffirm exactly that. So Wikipedia's baseline has a strong tendency to reflect an amalgamation of the editorial lines of the mainstream Western sources that the community has, in a very inevitable, self-fulfilling way, accepted as reliable. That doesn't mean that it's always or even mostly wrong, just that the articles can be, and often are, directed more towards spreading certain political narratives than the truth. It's not just that the sources themselves are biased, however. Every individual also has biases, and regardless of how much you try to regulate them, they're always going to manifest in some way. This means that the biases of members of its community are aggregated into a final product that, rather than being neutral, tends to at the very least push the reader towards a certain conclusion. And the biases of these community members, who are overwhelmingly English speakers from Western countries, are also influenced by the societies in which they live and the flow of information within them, for all the reasons that I just went over. This has manifested itself most clearly in the community consensus to heavily limit the citation of non-Western state-backed media outlets. In contrast, US state media outlets, which are at the very least just as unreliable, such as
paid for in part or in whole by Raytheon, right? Radio Free Asia. Are you fucking kidding me right here? That got a check mark? Oh my Lord above, man.
Radio Free Asia
Gosh.
were voted by the community to be reliable sources,
CIA.
despite the fact they frequently make extraordinary and completely unverifiable claims about the USA's geopolitical rivals without any evidence beyond someone we spoke to who we swear definitely exists told us this, trust us. Stories which are then, of course, never corroborated by any other source ever. For comparison, Wikipedia's editors near unanimously voted to ban the Global Times, a Chinese state media outlet, from being cited, with the stated reason being the Global Times publishes false or fabricated information, conspiracy theories, and propaganda.
They lead off with a Red Scare. They lead off with Red Scare, anti-China, China bad Red Scare. Jesus Christ.
Promoting the Chinese government. Now, I actually agree with that assessment
Right? It's xenophobia plus Red Scare.
completely. But
What I'm trying
every
to say.
single one of those reasons also applies equally to Radio Free Asia. They publish false and fabricated information, including conspiracy theories and propaganda promoting the US government. Yet they're accepted as a reliable source, literally the complete opposite of Wikipedia's assessment of the Global Times. That's just one example of how the community's biases often take precedent.
Yeah. So, like, generally speaking, if you're like reading something about a place and you're trying to like understand, like, you know, for instance, you know, why something happened or like history, and you're trying to get a material understanding and like a class conscious understanding of it, and one that, again, that breaks through imperial propaganda, one that pierces the imperial veil, you should honestly avoid Wikipedia is sort of like what I'm getting to. You know, you might actually be doing worse than you are doing good. And I know what that's like, because I'm like sometimes just trying to figure something out, and I just go to Wikipedia. It's tricky, right? You just got to be a little bit more aware, and that's what I'm learning for myself.
Over
Hey, Zook, welcome in.
Wikipedia's ostensibly espoused rules and guidelines. Since Wikipedia is run by its users and its users as a collective are biased, their consensus reflects that bias. So
Yeah.
Wikipedia inevitably ends up reflecting it too. This results in Wikipedia, on average, having a pronounced bias in favor of the status quo in Western countries, and of whatever positions are most convenient for said status quo. For this reason, it's an encyclopedia that, while very useful and undoubtedly an amazing human achievement purely due to its expansiveness, still often directs the reader more towards believing in certain politically charged narratives, rather than whatever's actually closest to the truth. This doesn't necessarily mean it always champions the pro-Western position, because sometimes the opposite position is kind of undeniable, rather that it will, on average, be slanted towards it, often subtly. Hence, why it should always be read very critically, and never considered as anything more than just a starting point on any remotely controversial topic.
Yes.
And you know what's a very controversial topic?
All right. So again, I do suggest you watch the rest of this video. There's like an hour more of this content. And I think it's worth watching. I'm not going to watch it today, not because it's just because it's too long, and it does get a little repetitive. And in that sense, you could sort of see where this is going, right? You see where that's going. I think he's good. If you watch it, you know, I think he'll sort of debunk. He'll at the very least demonstrate to you that Wikipedia is not a good place to learn about the truth about, the Holodomor question, I guess. So definitely worth watching. I'm going to end this clip, this react clip to this. I wanted to make sure that I shared, at the very least, the first part of that bad empanada video. I do suggest you watch the rest. All right. Live chat. Why don't you stick around? YouTube, I'm gonna bid you adieu. Chat, say goodbye to the YouTube viewers. Say goodbye. YouTube viewers, thank you for watching to the end of the clip. You can You can hit the like button below. You can subscribe, hit the bell. Make sure you catch my videos when they go live. And comment below. It helps me out a lot. Whether or not you liked it, I don't care. Just say something below. And yeah, you can also support my content on Patreon. Patreon.com/iDanSimpson. Love your face. Bye. Have a good one. Way to go, chat. We did it.